Okay, so we're going to do roll call after we finish this other one. Okay. So at the end of the last meeting, we adjourned to a special meeting where we discussed two items. One was the city manager recruitment, and there's no reportable action coming from that. And another one was council discussion with regards to potential litigation. And the report out of that is that the city manager and the mayor are authorized to conclude discussions with concurrence of not only the council but also our city attorney with regards to our EIR discussions with Facebook. So okay. So any no additional information. So if we could have a motion to adjourn our closed meeting.
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Next, we have a next. Can I have the agenda for the? Now I'd like to open up the noon special meeting of the council. Can we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Carlson?
Here.
Councilmember McKeithen? Here. Vice Mayor Lewis?
Here.
Mayor Widmer?
Here.
Councilmember Dobby is excused.
Okay, thank you. This point of time, we take public comments. Public comments are restricted to items that are on our agenda. So are there any public comments at this time?
You said that are on the agenda.
Aren't on the agenda, sorry.
Aren't? Or are?
Special meeting.
A special meeting
are.
Is are. I just want to make sure. So you can get up and speak on this agenda item.
So this is open to the public now?
Right.
On the agenda?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and the agenda item is a discussion and action to call an election,
Yes.
et cetera. Okay.
And you can speak on it as well after they've had their discussions.
Oh, so why don't we wait till after?
Yeah, it's entirely up to you.
This is brilliant, so
Yeah.
Okay, so seeing none, we will close the public comments and go to the regular agenda, which is discussion and action to call an election to submit to the voters an ordinance providing for a vote on location of the library and other potential park and town center improvements. Can we have your report?
Yes, you have my written report. It was thrown together at the last minute. It's important to note that this item actually adds discussion and action to call an election to the July meeting. So literally this is just adding it to the July meeting, and then from here we'll discuss ballot language, hopefully appoint an ad hoc committee, and then bring forth that ballot language, which needs to be approved and sent to the county no later than August 10th in order to make it to the November 6th ballot.
Okay.
From there, if you'd
And
like to.
are you recommending that we do that on July 25th, not July 18th?
Yes, on the agenda that I sent out, it said July 18th. However, I prefer July 25th because we have a full council then, and all 5 council members are supposed to author the ballot language.
Okay. So, Kathy, would you like to start the discussion?
I'm sure many of you are wondering why, after all this time, I would bring this forward to the council for a vote after so many meetings and so many indications that I did not want this to go to a popular vote, that I did not think it was the right way to go. And having stated, I would say ad nauseum, my reasons for that, I won't repeat those reasons. Instead, I'll say, as I did in the paragraphs that have been inserted in our city manager's staff report, that I'm saddened about where we are today. We formed the Library Steering Committee almost 2 years ago in what we thought was going to be a joyous occasion and with the best interests of the town at heart. The formation of a new, wonderful library that would benefit not merely existing residents, but first and foremost, the people in this town and in its environs for generations to come. A library that would be somewhat of a living organism that would keep pace with the technology without expansion of the existing site. The committee we tried to make up would represent a broad section of the Atherton community, not just friends of the Atherton Library. And in addition to the existing membership, it consisted of an environmentalist, head or co-chair of the town's environmental committee, Valerie Gardner, who was on the committee for approximately 9 months, an outstanding and longtime supporter of Holbrook-Palmer Park, Richard Moore. At one point, Earl Douglas, who many of you know, was involved with Menlo School, and Karen Bliss. All of these people contributed to the study of the Library Building Steering Committee, and every single one of them, when he or she left the committee, left for health or personal reasons, at the time indicating it was totally unrelated to the location of the library at the park. This committee was formed with the unanimous consent of this council. The committee held over approximately 100 special and regular meetings, all duly noticed and held. We had over approximately half a dozen community meetings. And I will be the first to admit that while participation was generally good, there was public criticism of the opportunity to be heard, and we could have done a better job of giving people an opportunity to raise and have answered their questions. Hindsight is wonderful. And we learned perhaps too late, and we could have done things better. We conducted an EIR, not because it was legally required, but because there was a public outcry that we do so. A public outcry which later turned into a public outcry as to why were we spending so much money by the same people, pretty much. It was an expensive proposition, which turned into an even more expensive proposition when there was a public outcry that we add Planning Commission review of the final EIR. This EIR process, while not wishing to spend additional public funds, was supported by the Library Building Steering Committee, and we approved an extended scoping period because it was going to be around the time of the holidays, and we did support having the Planning Commission conduct a hearing, again, while it was not required under CEQA rules or town rules, at an additional cost. And while it was for the purpose of having additional public input, 3 residents attended. 1 spoke. The comments made by that 1 resident, according to our town attorney, were not relevant to the CEQA process. We extended the time that people have to respond to the draft EIR and have set a special meeting to respond to the final EIR. We have had numerous mailings. We on the committee have gone door to door and tried to speak with people. We have made ourselves personally available and have stated that in our mailings when we have spoken with people, when we have had our meetings at council meetings and said we are personally available, we are available by phone, we are available through our email site, we are available for small or large meetings to attend and answer at length any questions you might have. One homeowners organization took advantage of that, the Victoria Manors Homeowners Association. No other has, and few residents have taken us up on the offer. We have stated that the building would likely be in the most preferred environmental site alternative, namely approximately 10,000 square feet. But of course, that's something that is totally up to the residents and what they desire to see. We have stated as a council and as a committee that it would not utilize open space, would it be placed in Holbrook-Palmer Park, but would be within the main foundation of the existing main house and the hardscape there. We have stated, and it has been confirmed by LSA, without the input of any members on the Building Steering Committee, none of whom have spoken with LSA except one or two prior to LSA beginning the CEQA process, merely as an introduction and a review of what the project was. I have never spoken myself, except perhaps, and I don't even remember this, to say hello. And the other night, I didn't even recognize the people who attended the Planning Commission meeting. Have confirmed that the main house is not historic. Olive Palmer is reported not to have even liked it. We were willing, because of the public desire to do so, to go forward with a survey. A survey was conducted shortly after the property was given to the town. It was a survey that included a multitude of demographics. 1 out of every 3 Atherton households was assessed. They made a point of interviewing people of all ages because they determined that the ages of all members of each household were sought, since age has significance in interpreting the present recreational interests of the community and in forecasting future probabilities. 520 responses were received. They made a point of interviewing people who were old, people who were young, people who were from various areas of the community. And the results were, and it's reported throughout this Kroger and Associates February 1959 report, that the single greatest interest expressed was in a library in the park. The numbers were rather astonishing, and I would suggest that people look at it. By far and away, the library in a park was what people wanted at that time. And as former council member Marsala stated in June 2010 at the meeting on the 16th, when we were discussing a library in the park, a lot of people will be happy about this proposal, and in fact there are surveys that date back to the late 50s that show people were in favor of a library in the park. Olive Palmer wanted the land to be used for recreational purposes. She loved libraries. A large part of her estate was given, I believe, to the Broderick Library when she died. And one of her heirs said that that was what she loved. The building that we had been looking at was a building that was designed to be flexible and to accommodate changes in technology, not one that was going to expand and encroach into other areas beyond the existing main frame of the house and its hardscape. It was one that was discussed with the architects that would have external walls that would support, of course, the structure, but internal walls that would be such that they could be broken down. It would have rolling shelves and stock so that they could be moved and removed, as the case may be, as books conceivably became obsolete and e-technology took over. Discussion was even had with regard to a floating floor so that cables and other electrical lines could be easily reached to accommodate the new technology. And desks and tables would have plug-ins at each one. We didn't want to looking at a library that was obsolete when built or was going to have add-ons within the foreseeable future, but rather one that could stay within the existing structure. This was not a library that was designed in our minds to be in conflict with existing opportunities at the park. It was not a library that was designed to be in conflict with tennis. The tennis courts were pointed out as a representation of the amount of space the library would take as compared to the existing tennis courts, not to be used for parking. It was not one that was needed for parking with regard to sports or with tennis. Existing parking was shown to exist and was supported by the draft EIR and the EIR. As supported in the draft EIR and in speaking with our chief of police, Ed Flint, there was no indication that it was seen to require a greater police presence, but rather our police move around from location to location in town and would be just as available at any time at a library in the park as they would at the existing site. The lost income from rentals in the park was questionable. 3 years' loss was indicated last October of approximately $330,000 of taxpayer money. You can look at it as we did this morning and say, well, that didn't include the play school rentals. Yes. There are other things, that's income. There are other costs it didn't include. And future income was also uncertain. No one could know whether or not it would ever make money. But whatever the future income, it would have come from a usage by a group of people who were not, for the most part, Atherton residents, who prevented use of the park by Atherton residents at a time when Atherton residents were likely to most want to use the park, namely on weekends. And if you look at this report by Kroger, it says, offsetting the foregoing costs is the possibility of some income, although this would probably have to be kept quite nominal to meet the requirements of Mrs. Palmer's will that the recreational park be maintained at the town's expense. And it talks about the 3 opportunities for maintaining it at the town's expense: bond indebtedness, capital outlay, or soliciting gifts, not rental of facilities. Our attempts to enlighten have not worked. Sadly, there is so much misinformation without factual basis being circulated. Equally, there is much conjecture without knowledge. Which brings us to where we are today. It's a sad state of affairs with no end in sight. The library is a wonderful thing. But having spoken with a couple of members of the Library Steering Committee, 2 of which are here today, one is forced to ask the question, is it worth the price of our civility? And that's why I brought the question to the council.
Anything else?
No.
Other council comments?
Not at this time.
I'd like to hear from the public.
Okay, well, I have a comment. Just a quick comment here. From my perspective, I guess there's been a lot of rhetoric, as Kathy has pointed out, with regards to people saying, "Oh, we need to adhere to the democratic process." Whichever way we go, deciding to have a vote or not having a vote, we've still adhered to the democratic process. The democratic process here in this town is as follows. The people elect their representatives. The representatives have a platform. And because of that, they get voted in. And they're empowered then to make decisions. And some decisions, and in fact many decisions, are 3-2. In this case here, there seems to be a lot of discussion that if it's a 3-2 vote, then it needs to go to the public. You guys would be voting on a book this big. And so, we can't have everything going forward to the public. I do think that the whole process, as was moving forward, was in adherence with the democratic process, and I bristle at the comments made by some that implying that the democratic process is not being adhered to. However, it's important that we hear what the town has to say, because it's unclear to me whether or not the people want a library or don't want a library, or some people just say, hey, I don't care. Many people, you see how many people are at many of the council meetings. Sometimes we get a few more, but most people are not overly involved in town activities. So we've decided that to at least have this meeting today to put forward the idea of having an election with regards to the library, some aspects with regards to the library. We've also added on the agenda, there are other things that are coming up. There's a group that wants to build a 200-seat stadium in our park and have concessions, which actually would violate the will, and other things, scoreboards, ring fence locations. That should be something that should be considered for also public input. So when we're getting public input, we should be getting input on a variety of major capital items, and when we're asking people to vote, ask them to vote on several things. So that's why we've put in a few other things on this special meeting request, and so I'm in favor of the moving forward where with regards to the vote. I think that people have asked. First they asked for a survey, and we didn't want a survey. So now we're saying they wanted a vote. So now we're saying, okay, have a vote. So that was my comments, and I appreciate you listening. We now open up to public discussion on this. Rose?
Rose Howe, Isabella Avenue, and I wanted to first thank the council for coming around to this point where we are now. I know it's been a tough week. It's night and day where we were last week to today. I know it's been tough, but I think Mayor Widmer, you said it all. You don't know where everybody stands on the issue. You don't know if they want it in the park or they don't want it in the park. You just said that a few minutes ago. Mm-hmm. And what better way to get a gauge than to have a ballot vote in the town, getting everybody's opinion of where they want it. And I think historically, I appreciate the history, Councilman McKeithen, but, it's very enlightening, but I think the core of this is people don't feel like they've had a voice. People don't think they've had a vote in saying, where do you want this? Do you want it in the park? It's that simple of a question. And you say that it's been in there underlying, but I get this back to me repeatedly when I talk to people. We didn't get a say in where we want it, or do we want it in the park? And that's the basic question. You look like you wanted to say something. Okay. So anyway, and moving forward, again, I just want to thank you for where we are now. And I would recommend that you vote to put this on the ballot in November to the voters as a ballot, and just be done with it. It's been going on too long. It's a town divided, but it's also a town united, too, in many ways. The united for, the united against. So let's be done with this. This has been going on too long. I would also recommend that you put this on the July 18th, July 25th agenda so that you can talk and discuss this as you do. So those are the things. And if this should move forward, I would hope that if it goes to the ballot form, that the pros and cons would be written in a fair and equitable way. My husband will give me the extra 3 minutes, and like at home, so he's not here, but anyway, so I would hope that it would be written in a fair, equitable way to both sides, that they feel that their ideas and their thoughts are relayed properly, and that there's no bias. So, with that, I just think that this is the right thing to do. To move forward, put this on the ballot, especially in this climate of hostility, divisiveness. Just put it out there to the people. As you said, you don't know where they stand, and we don't know where everybody stands either. So I just wanted to thank you. I appreciate your moving forward on this, and I appreciate your consideration.
But you do understand that Councilmember McKeithen and I put it on the item for our discussion.
Well, I didn't.
I
didn't because
I just want to make it clear. I want to make it clear that actually it was Councilmember McKeithen and I who have asked for this to be. So it's not that you're saying, hey, why did convincing us this is what we said we wanted to do.
No, we didn't.
Okay.
I'm not saying that.
Okay.
I don't think I was saying that, and I appreciate that. From what I heard, it sounded like it was only Councilman McKeithen, and that's why I said I appreciate this, and I appreciate the history of this. I didn't know you were involved too, but I appreciate this. Is that okay?
Not a problem. Not a problem.
Okay,
I just wanted to make sure that you knew that Councilmember McKeithen was for it. Because I got the impression
that's
that
good.
That
I mean, that's
a good.
No. I think that's an absolutely good sign that we all move forward as a town and put aside whatever differences we have, which are many occasionally, and go. This is the only way I see that we can resolve this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comments? Charles.
Charles Marsala, Emily. One question. You said that selling hot dogs and concessions for Little League will be against the will?
So it's something for commerce, yes.
But we've sold stuff at the park for years for different events.
It's a separate entity. But okay, Charles, we can discuss that when we talk about Little League.
Okay, I don't know if we need to.
I don't think that's a purpose of this discussion item. Okay.
The other things that I was going to address is when council members run, like last election, there were 4 people that ran. 2 people could be for the library in the park and 2 people opposed, but 3 people get elected. So when someone votes, they don't necessarily get to vote and say this is the platform of just people who want a library in the park and this is one not. They're going to be a mixture of viewpoints that get elected because we don't have that many candidates. The when you start talking about this election, I am in favor. I'm going to put this out there of a town center bond. That might not be liked by too many people, but I think you should consider it and debate it because really, for about $50 a year per household, you could fund the town center and at least let the voters have an opportunity to discuss that. So I see that is also for consideration on this ballot measure. I think it's a great idea. The residents of San Francisco voted on what to do with how to instruct Park and Rec of San Francisco what to do with Coit Tower. So having a referendum isn't necessarily a unique thing for Atherton. The vote will bring about support, and I realize there have been about 100 meetings, but those meetings haven't been at the council level, which haven't been on the council. That's where people really want to express their viewpoint. And my website still does say that the library in the park could be a really great solution for what the town, we have the money, want to go with it. It was about 8 months ago that Park and Rec suggested having a townwide survey of vote, and there has been a lot of hostility. And now I think that we finally have ended that by saying, or it looks like we're going to do that. The other question I have is why have a special meeting to announce an agenda item? Wouldn't it have been possible just to have had this on the agenda come July without calling a meeting to say we want it on the agenda?
We needed to have the time frame to be able to have all the council members discuss the items that were going to be on there so we could make the deadlines for the presidential meeting.
There's a lot of work involved with putting together this ballot measure. I wasn't going to go forward with that without council actually wanting to put this on the July agenda.
Okay, so in details of that, like I said, there's a lot of work. There's pros and cons statements. There's a lot of things because normally when the parcel tax, the council is running the pro campaign, and there's some people that say the negative. I mean, I think there'll be a lot of confusion in the town as to with the wording of this and how people want to get involved, whatever side they're on. So as soon as you can, I guess, to clarify that, or if you want to today talk about ideas that you have as how you're going to approach that so people know what's going to happen before, because it's right up against the wall, as you said. It's 100 days away, the election.
I can put out information if council is okay with that. Anybody can submit an argument for or against the measure. Council's going to submit for or against as well, or both, for and against. And then the city attorney always submits an impartial analysis, which will be included in the ballot packet.
Any other public comments?
Yeah, my name is Ann McNerney, and first I'd like to ask, like Councilwoman Elizabeth or Carlson, to bring me up to speed as to what I missed.
You mean
just recently, yeah.
Just for this meeting?
Can you
Go ahead. I'm not sure that I'm allowed to do that in
Are they?
Public comment back and forth, but I think the meeting just started, and we opened it up with the item that's on the agenda about putting it on the July council meeting for the ballot to vote for the library. And Councilmember McKeithen made a statement. Mayor Widmer made a statement, and then they just opened it up for public comment. So you really haven't missed a lot. I don't think.
so in support of putting it on the November.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
I have some questions then, which is that I just sort of say that I'm definitely for a vote if there was a proviso or a guarantee given by the town council that they would take no action on ratifying and passing the final environmental impact report, because I think I read somewhere that once that's ratified, there's very little the citizenry can do to stop the progress of whatever project that is. So if we say we're going to have a vote in November, I don't know what's to prevent, Mrs. McKeithen on the Park and Rec saying, well, let's go ahead. And then by November, there's a hole in the ground in the park. And, so I'm just trying to say that, I'd prefer to see a vote as the petition, but that is similar to the petition that was, I think, submitted by and signed by and requested by a number of Athens rather than this vote. But if this vote goes through, it has to have a proviso or guarantee by the town council that they will not ratify any other action until the will of the town is measured in a much more representative way, which a vote will do. As to the town council, the town center meeting, or the park, or expanding the present facility so it will be earthquake safe. So I would say it's a dangerous thing to ratify the vote if we don't have a guarantee from the town council that they're not going to, on the one hand, do this, but it'll be too late because the EIR has been ratified and they can go ahead. So I hope it's not a smoke and mirrors thing. I hope it's legitimate effort by the town council to finally listen to the many people of Atherton who feel that things have been sort of pushed through by a small group of people. Then I forget, but the other thing is I did read the high-speed rail thing the first time it was on the ballot, and knowing that the group that did the big dig was one of the major sponsors, I was already a no, but they said they were going to expand the rail ride if it goes through 3 times. And I think the town center spot, there's enough space for a new library to be built, even if they expanded the high-speed rail 3 times the present size of the track. Of course, we're hoping to stop it, but money doesn't talk, it swears.
Any other public comments?
Wally Sleeth, I live in 227 Catalpa Avenue, mayor and council members. With regard to the former speaker's comments, I think before you take any action, you need to talk to your attorney. I'm not at all sure that she's correct, that even if the EIR is certified, I think the vote in November would take precedence over that. So I don't think we need to slow up the process as long as we do have this election. Thank you.
Any other public comments?
Hamilton Drive. From the very beginning, I've been opposed to... Wait a minute.
It's okay. We'll give you more time.
Yeah. Been opposed to the idea of the library in the park. But I really feel with a vote, if it turns out that people want it in the park, I'll just be pleased about that and accept that for what it is. So we'll see, and hopefully that'll work out. Thanks.
Any other public comments?
Ray Gerard, Irving Avenue. I want to add my thanks for the council taking the leadership to put this on the ballot. Since Mayor Widmer raised the issue of the request by the Little League, I assume that that's fair game for comment as well, and I would just want to go on record that I'm opposed to that and would hope that the council will give that a very, very careful scrutiny, particularly in terms of any statements and wills, any deed restrictions in deed of trust, etc., because I think that's another step towards reducing the amount of available space within the park for the citizens of the town to use. Thank you.
No, you get one. You get one comment. No, you get one comment. Any other public comments? Isn't that the rule, Teresa? Okay.
Walter Robinson. I'm a 41-year resident of Atherton. Let me just make a comment first. I do think that we ought to express appreciation for what the Library Committee has done. I mean, there's an immense amount of work. I attended a number of the sessions. I know others have too. But given that, and even given the turnout you see today, I think you have to realize that people don't really get all the information. If you ask people in Atherton, which I do, what do you think of the library? They have opinions, but they haven't figured out where you express them and how you express them. If I understand correctly, the only issue on today is whether to put onto your agenda for the 25th of July the decision as to whether to have a vote. Is that correct?
It would actually be the resolution calling the election.
Right.
Yes.
Right. So in other words, by voting today to put it on your agenda for the 25th does not mean that there will necessarily be an election?
We're going to create the ballot language in the resolution calling the election, so I would hope, I would assume that that's going to get approved.
So the decision's already been made
Right.
then.
Yeah,
And then
it sounds like it.
we pass the resolution.
The intent is, the intent is
To go forward.
if there's a vote, it will be on the election. We then need to work on the wording, and the council must approve the wording that goes on the ballot.
Right. Okay.
And that's
Well,
what's going to be approved at the next election. Obviously, if people could change their mind, but I don't think I don't anticipate that that's the case.
okay. Well, my only point is that I think more publicity is obviously better. This meeting today, I just heard about by happenstance.
Yeah.
But I think if you do have the publicity for the actual decision-making time, whether it's the 25th or whether it's your election, I think that's healthy. I do find it, quite frankly, unhealthy the way that the dialogue has gone. I want to encourage council members that most of us like civility. It's a very tough decision. I think everybody's ideas, both in this room, in this community, and on the council, are all bona fide. We know the park. It's quite frankly the only asset this town has, in my view, is that park. So everybody is concerned about it. Everybody has different views on it. And the Little League issue is an important issue, that is the utilization. So let me encourage that the more discussion you can have, the more publicity you can send out, the better off we all are. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Bob Roser, 23 Wilburn Avenue. I want to just say that for two people who believe that the library should be in the park and that work was done was all the right stuff to come forward and do this, I'm very impressed with that because I know how you get yourself into passionately about a position. And it's also interesting to note that the library work, if you're for the library in the park, it was great work. If you're not for the library in the park, it was lousy work. But isn't it the same work? I think so. So the issue here isn't the work or all the analysis. Yeah, is it perfect? Nothing's perfect. The issue here is, do people get a chance to say what they want to do in terms of a library in Holbrook-Palmer Park? And it looks like you're making that happen. I congratulate you.
Any other public comments? Okay, we'll close public comments, come back to the council.
I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a comment.
Elizabeth wanted to wait till after.
We have discussion. All right. Yeah. So I'm glad that we're at this junction today. The agenda item was a little confusing to me in so far as it seems like it's got a rider at the very end of it that kind of throws in the kitchen sink and kind of confuses the issue. Calling for providing a vote on the location of the library, period, I think would be sufficient at this point, because I think that's what we heard from the majority of the people at our last council meeting, that we want to vote. We want to vote. The residents want to have the opportunity to be heard. But then saying, and other potential park and town center improvements, muddies the water. So I'm a little unclear about that. But that can be discussed in a minute. But my position, as you all know, has always been that with a project of this size, a civic project of this size and scope that requires a general plan change, a zoning plan change for it going to the park, is deserving of the residents' right to vote and to weigh in on it. The Park and Rec Commission said you should do a survey. We're not going to recommend that it go in the park unless we do a survey. That was way back in the summer. In the fall, a resident brought over 300 signatures from residents saying, don't make the decision to put the library in the park until you do a master plan of all the civic buildings, of all of the properties limited that we have of where those civic buildings can go. Do a master plan, do a thorough due diligence evaluation, and just don't do it. Both of those fell on deaf ears from the majority of the council. We over the last 8 months, as more and more residents became aware of what was happening with the AIR, with the library being pushed through to have it be built at the park, they became more and more involved in trying to have their voice be heard, to the extent that just this last week a petition has been circulated just over the last few days, and over 250 petitions have been signed that would have forced the council to hold a special meeting to discuss putting the library and the park to a vote of the populace. And there are several other important topics, like asking the residents where would the new library be located, in the park or the new town center site or its current location, and even to the extent of should the Atherton withdraw from the Joint Powers Authority, the San Mateo County Library Joint Powers Authority, and then also should the town prepare with citizen participation a master plan study for all the buildings and structures existing or planned on all town-owned properties. So just basic questions like that, those 4 things, which I think has precipitated us to come to this point. I think that the outcry from the residents, with the over 250 petitions being signed, they have not been submitted yet, they are still being collected, would have essentially forced the council to hold a meeting such as this. So I'm very happy that we're doing it, that we have the opportunity to write it up and to put it out for a vote. It's something that in a democratic process, in a project like this size, we need to get input from all of our residents and to heal our residents, heal our town by giving them the opportunity to vote. So I'm very much in support of putting it out, the location of the library, to a vote. I'm not sure about the other little rider and other potential park and town center improvements, how that fits into what we're going to put on the ballot.
Jerry?
Well, this is indeed a big step. I don't know what the tipping point was, but I do appreciate the action that Councilperson McKeithen and Mayor Widmer have taken in this regard. A long time ago, advocated that we needed to find out what the will of the people in this town is in regard to the library and the park, that it was a major issue. It wasn't something that we campaigned on, that at least I don't remember making any campaign statements pro or con library in the park. And so there wasn't a lot of dialogue, I don't think, that took place in the town throughout the community about this until some decisions were made about preferred site and things like that, and people began to wake up and to become engaged. That is the biggest, I guess, challenge in this town is to get the residents engaged in a matter, and time and time again I've seen it doesn't happen until the 11th hour when council's either about ready to make a decision or has already made a decision. So we'll keep on working on that to try to see if we can't do a better job. But two concerns, or two things we need to think about, I think, between now and the next meeting. One, of course, is, okay, exactly what are we going to be voting on besides the library? I think that's the biggest issue, and I would hope that would be the focus. If there's something else that needs to be that's equally as big, we need to talk about that more. Second thing is, okay, what do we do as far as purse strings go if we decide to go ahead and put this on the ballot? I think we need to answer the question, do we just halt spending more money until a decision is made by the residents, yes or no, the library and the park? I think that it's something that will be part of our discussion at the next meeting. So I'm going to be in support of putting this matter on our next council agenda.
I would ask that this not be painted as something that was promoted by any petition, especially one where we had no knowledge of how many supposed signatures were obtained. We have no knowledge of that. That is not in any way what prompted this. And again, I would hope that we could at least at this point in time refrain from conjecture, which is what has led us to this in part. What has led us to this is the cumulative effect of the lack of civility and the hostility that has arisen as a consequence of this issue. As far as what I believe should be placed on the ballot, I've already told you, a vote with regard to a location of a library in Holbrook-Palmer Park. I have spoken with the town attorney, and it is my understanding that certification of an EIR would have no effect with regard to a town vote, and that being the final word. This is not smoke and mirrors. This is not something that I intend to retract or go against. That is my final say. My only hope is that we do not continue with misrepresentations. We do not try to paint things. We try to be as honest in what we present going forward as we possibly can, and we try and end this supposed bias and coloration and name-calling and hidden agendas that has brought us to this state. Now, what should be on the agenda? I do believe the town center should be on an agenda. I attended the last meeting of the town center committee, And that drawing was so bad that they asked that we not take the copies because it looked like it was going to be, 23,000 square feet and a monstrosity. It was a concrete monstrosity. It was going to cost, $13,000? And I think that if we're talking about the potential for high-speed rail coming along here, and we're talking about electrification, then I think people ought to discuss whether or not they want a town center, just as much as a library in the park, whether or not we're talking about donations. Part of it is town funds. It's funds that were almost 2.0, but it's 1.8, 1.9 of building department funds. It's some town funds that have been expended on these studies. People ought to have a say in that just as well as it goes forward. And whether or not we're making, I know Mr. Feimster wanted a letter read about whether or not it was technologically obsolete. The drawing had 5 lobbies, which I understand they said they didn't want and thought were not appropriate before you even started to enter offices.
You don't need to critique the design.
I understand that, but the people of the town are, someone said the people of the town don't have information. They need information. They need to understand that is at least the initial proposal, and they need to understand that that is part of what they're working from right now, and there are these other issues as well. So I think that given the fact that a master plan could still have gone forward, notwithstanding the absence perhaps of a library within the town center complex, but nobody ever raised that either before the library was even in its inception or since it has not been placed on the budget. No one has raised it. It makes one wonder.
But we want to just discuss whether or not what items we want to put on.
So I think it's credible to say that we should have a discussion amongst the populace as to whether or not they do indeed want to see a town center go forward, given the multitude of other issues that would affect our town center.
So I need to make a rebuttal because there's misinformation being projected here, and you weren't at that meeting.
Excuse me?
I need to make a rebuttal.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. So the Town Center Task Force meeting that Kathy McKeithen was at, and she's really misrepresenting the outcome of the meeting to the extent that it's painting an incredibly distorted view. The committee members agreed that the initial design was too large and too grand, and so they authorized me to communicate with the architect. And I'm going to read you the email that was sent to the architect saying, "Thank you for meeting with us via phone conference yesterday. We appreciate your willingness to work with us as we strive to develop the general concept of a reasonably sized, reasonably designed, and reasonably priced new town center." Now I'm going to make a little off memo here, comment that you understand that there's no money in the town to build a new town center. And everything that the Town Center Task Force has done to date has been on a pro bono basis. We held a design competition, had architects from the region, nationally known architects, do a conceptual design pro bono and give us their concepts on how we can design a new town center. They have met with our town department heads. We did get a little bit of money. Mayor Widmer convinced council to give us a $5,000 budget, $2,500 for them to meet with our town department heads to determine the scope and the size of the building. And based on that, they presented a floor plan. And at our Town Center Task Force meeting, which Councilmember McKeithen attended, it was decided that this was too big. And so I will continue with what the Town Center Task Force instructed me to communicate with them, that I have been authorized by the Town Center Task Force to contact you and summarize our meeting and expectations from you for our next meeting scheduled on July 10th, which I hope everyone would come to meet with us at that time. Our goal in this next go-around is to have something reasonable to take to potential donors. You understand that we can only build this town center, the new police department, the new police building, the new town administration, planning department, public works department, with private donations. There's no money in our general fund. We're not going to burden the townspeople with a lot of debt. That is the way the residents are going to speak. So we want you to bring us something reasonable to take to potential donors for commitments. The task force's direction is to resize the project as follows. 1, reduce the overall size of the building by 25% by reducing the size of private offices, common areas like lobbies, atriums, elevators, etc., and other ways that you determine feasible. Reduce the overall cost of the project to a maximum of $10 million or less. Scale back the, quote, grandness of the building so it is a bit more modest with the use of more flex and hoteling shared spaces where possible. We have $2,500 left from what Council authorized us, and that is to be used for marketing purposes, and we need your help in preparing a modest marketing package to present to donors. We believe that if you can resize the project and give us a new program summary, new cost analysis, and new building schematic, we will be able to use the $2,500 already authorized by Council for marketing purposes and not have to go back and request additional funds. Is this achievable? I spoke with him. He says absolutely yes. You have to understand that this is an architect that regularly fees bill out for, at hundreds of dollars an hour, and it's a process. So the Town Center Task Force, yes, it's going to be voted by the people, maybe not at the ballot box, but by their pocketbooks. It's not like the library. So I just want to set the stage because Councilmember McKeithen's description of that plan and meeting was quite misrepresenting.
Actually, I was at the meeting, but I'm not going to comment because we're not doing a review on the new town center, and it'd be inappropriate to do that now. We can have that discussion on the 10th. However, I believe that a new town center is something that the people may want to have a say on, as well as issues with regards to, a lot of people came out to discuss the Little League in the park last time we looked at it. And so I felt if we were going to have the expenditure of putting something on the ballot, that we might as well maximize our investment and get input from 3 key things. And as you pointed out, Vice Mayor, when we're spending a lot of money or the town is making a big investment, whether it comes from individual donors, but I think that also the New Town Center Task Force is planning on taking the $2 million in the building fund to have that contribute. That may not be the case, but if in fact that they're going to take that money and that's a significant investment, according to your words, that the town would be making. The Little League would be taking a significant part of our park, which seems to be a big issue, that the town should weigh in on all 3 items. We don't want to have every item go down and become a 3-2 vote, and we're getting letters from Peter Carpenter and others saying we need to have a vote on it. So let's have the 1 vote. Let's get the 3 items there, binding vote, and we move forward. That's my recommendation.
Are you clarifying the other potential park being the Little League?
That's, yeah.
So
Yeah.
That's what I
The Little
was
League.
just confused about, because you said other potential park, and so now you're saying you're.
Well, that is
that
is the biggest one right there. There may be a concern should the new town center be built in the park. We have to decide. I brought that up at your meeting, and I brought that up with another person. So my comments are we should hear from the people. And so So I believe all 3 items should be on the ballot. That's my recommendation and my motion, and that we move forward with having this vote, and it be a binding vote.
Second.
Well,
Yes.
before there's a motion,
Okay,
what's
fine.
before you is to add an item to the July 25th meeting. So I need you to give me direction on 3 different items. You want me to add that to the July 25th meeting?
Yeah.
What kind of ballot language do you want on that resolution? And whether or not you want to create an ad hoc committee to create that ballot language with me.
Certainly.
We don't have a lot of time to
Right. Yeah, we need to get moving. So why don't we do those independently? I believe that there should be an item on the 25th. I'd like to make a motion that we have an item on the 25th agenda to have a vote, to authorize us and approve language that would be on a ballot measure, to have a vote on the library and other items such as Newtown Center, and if we want to say Little League or item.
Let's talk about those next
Okay,
meeting.
that's fine. Okay, we'll do them all together.
No. You're confusing the issue.
I think that's the desire.
It's too confusing.
It's a ballot measure for town expenditure.
It's going to be separate ballot measures.
Yes.
So you'd have measure A, measure B, measure C, just like
Mhm.
you have measure S and measure T. They all be separate. It's not going to be one big
Right.
ballot measure.
Correct.
Saying, do you want this? Do you
Correct.
Want this?
I wasn't implying that.
Right. I just want to make it
It's
clear.
all the same issue, town expenditure of funds and getting the voice of the people heard.
No, what you're saying is different from what's on here.
No, no.
Well, yes, it is. What you're saying is different than what's on here. You're saying it's town expenditures. It's not. That's not what's on here.
I'm saying a vote on 3 issues that would involve town expenditure, and we want to hear what the people have to say.
So you're gonna overlay this with town expenditures.
No, I'm simply saying that's the reason to put all 3 on the ballot.
But that's not what's on here.
What's
The
on
reason to put it on the ballot is because the people want to be able to vote for the location of the library.
And the people want to be able to have a say.
They have not said anything about the Little League. When that comes up, then we'll have a discussion about
And
that.
people have said things about the town center.
They have?
Yes.
Like what?
We even got a letter saying it was obsolete just this week.
You did? I didn't get one.
You were asked to read it at the next town center meeting.
I don't have it.
Did you get it, Teresa? From Mr. Feemster?
I did not.
Well, I have
Sorry.
it.
Yeah.
And I've received others as well.
But that's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the people from the meeting last week, our meeting last week. This chamber's
Elizabeth, I beg to
filled
differ
with
with you.
people.
I'm the one who asked us to come before the meeting. I know what it is I want.
I'm the one who's been calling.
I took the opportunity to take 5 minutes to let the rhetoric slow down, as well as have a conversation with our city manager. And the results of the conversation with the city manager is that we should probably eliminate 1 item, potentially, for the council to consider from the ballot measure, since the town center is further down the path, or not very far down the path, is still in developmental. We should remove that. But since the Little League construction is pending, it's been at the Planning Commission and is about to come up, and it does bring a lot of people and has brought a lot of discussion and will impact significantly the park in the very short period of time. We would like to, the city manager and I believe that those 2 items should be the ones that remain on the ballot for discussion on ballot measure. And at this point in time, we'll take the town center. We'll postpone that until that's further down. But as we move further, then it should be something that should be considered for a vote as well. Did I represent the conversation properly?
Yes.
So any discussion? Jerry?
Yeah, sitting here thinking about our discussion and so forth, I came to the conclusion in my mind that as far as the library is concerned, it's pretty black and white as what we would vote on. I'm glad to hear your discussion about the town center, because there really isn't anything definitive at this point to I don't know what question I would pose other than, do you ever want a new town center or not? But I think that's kind of premature. And I guess the same thing with the Little League, unless there's something really definitive. You've alleged, I didn't go to the Planning Commission meeting, I was out of town, and so I don't know what was proposed or what's being proposed and at what stage the council will see it. But there needs to be something definitive that people will know exactly what it is that they're voting on, and not something that's just nebulous, general kind of a thing. Is in my view. So, if you can meet that criteria by the next meeting, that you have a very definite black and white, yes or no, or whatever it might be, kind of a decision on a particular thing, that's one thing. But if it's strictly a very general kind of a thing, then I would oppose to be putting that in front of the voters.
Well, they're still proposing what they brought to the council earlier, where it was a 200-seat permanent stadium.
I haven't seen that, Mayor. Those are your words. I'm not convinced.
You were at the council meeting that we had.
I don't remember a 200. I don't remember a 200-seat stadium at all.
Okay, that's fine. No problem. Fine. Well, we'll leave it on. So I'd like to move forward with the two items. Is there any further discussion?
Let's take them separately.
Yes, I disagree wholeheartedly. The Town Center Task Force is far enough along to make a decision. They indicated that they were going to go out to large donors probably in the fall, and then be going out to the populace in early January. You were there. Mm-hmm. At that rate, that means that it will be a done deal as far as donor dollars being solicited by early January. If that's the case, then they're in pretty much the same position that people are saying the library is with regard to utilizing donor funds and not having the populace weigh in on this. You can say that, Elizabeth, you have something to say?
No, move on.
You can say that it's not right for the library not to go for a vote, even if the money is there and the work has been done. By the same token, it's not right to go ahead using the same analysis if money has been donated. And in this case, it wouldn't all be donated money. It would still be almost $2 million of money, taxpayer money, that's been set aside for the building department, and other funds, albeit a relatively small amount that's been used from the general fund for this project. There seems to be no good reason to argue for a popular vote for a building in one case and not have the entire populace weigh in for a building in another case. Unless you don't want to get everybody's opinion and hear what they have to say, then I don't understand how you can argue one and not reasonably support the other.
Okay. Other comments? Elizabeth, you wanted to make a comment.
I'm a little confused when you're talking about taxpayer money in the building fund. That's really not taxpayer money. That was excess building fund revenue that was collected specifically to pay for the building department's portion of a potential new town center. And so it was not taxpayer money like the donor city funds. So the other thing is that the reason we're here today is because of the library controversy. We're not here today because of a town center controversy. There's no controversy. The council unanimously supported the Town Center Task Force to research opportunities for the building of a new town center. There's been no controversy at all behind that. So to confuse the issue with this agenda item to vote on the location of the library and then add and other potential park and town center improvements muddies the waters. It confuses the issue. It creates conflict. Instead of being straightforward and transparent about what your motives are, to say location of the library, let's get this behind us. Let's vote on the location of the library. Let's heal the town from this conflict. We've added another layer to confuse and muddy the waters.
I don't see how that's the case when there are going to be 3 different ballot measures that would be voted on. It's not going to be a ballot measure that says, do you think the town should spend money on the following things, blah, 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 and list them all, so that somebody who supports the library or doesn't support the library but does support the new town center, they'll be conflicted as to how to vote. There'll be 3 separate measures, yes, no, and or 2 separate measures, yes, no, or 1 measure, yes, no, and that's essentially going to be it. So I really take exception to the implication that there will not be a clear, do you support the library location, preferred library location in the park, or do you support the library, something along those lines, or should the library stay where it is, whatever the wording is going to be. There will be a very clear question on that library, and people will say yes or no. It'll have absolutely no other ties to the other questions. It's like saying, do you have a Volt, and does your husband drive a Dodge, okay, or something like that. One doesn't imply anything from the other, and the answer to one does not flavor the other. And so I do take exception to the fact that trying to create a controversy when in reality I don't think a controversy exists.
And I don't believe that there has to be a controversy to put it on the ballot. It is a separate issue, but just as the Little League Stadium is a separate issue, but we're discussing it today, the issue is the people's right to vote on an issue that affects the town. And I have no problem with the Town Center Task Force drafting the ballot measure and drafting the question. This is something that they have worked on, and they should be allowed to draft it. But I do think that if we're talking about people's right to vote on issues that affect them, this is something that the townspeople should learn about, and many of them haven't learned about it, just as they haven't learned about the library. We've been discussing this. They don't know what's going on. We've already said that. They don't know. So now's the opportunity to educate them, not only about a library, but about a stadium and about a town center, and see how it is they really feel. That's what Rose House said. We don't really know how they feel. Well, we don't really know how they feel about a town center either. The vast majority of people probably, because most people, unfortunately, don't get involved. So let's find out. That sounds fair.
Mr. Mayor, so are you proposing that between now and the next meeting there be an ad hoc committee or committees that be assigned to each of these 3 proposed ballot measures that you are proposing, that would come up with language along with the city manager in terms of the ballot measures? Would that be part of what you're proposing here?
Yeah, that's what they would have to work over the next month to with the city manager to have that language brought to the council on the 25th.
So at that meeting then on the 25th, the residents of this town could make their comments and the council can make its determination as to whether they wanted to have all or 1 or 2 of the measures on a November ballot?
Yes. The city manager wanted to make a comment.
Actually, I'm okay now. Thank you.
Okay. So can we have a motion? Thank you for all the conversation and and the discussion and indulgence in the 5-minute recess where I had some clarity from the city manager.
I move that we put the issue of the library in the park, the baseball stadium in the park, and the town center task force, the town center, the building of a new town center on the November ballot.
I don't think we can
The agenda.
put...
It can't be the ballot. It has to be the agenda.
On a ballot for
You can't vote
the
on
July
it.
25th
No,
agenda.
no.
Yeah, it'll be on the agenda.
Yeah,
And I don't think we can say specifically the baseball Little League at the park, because
I'd like
it
to
says
make a motion,
potential.
if I could. I'd like to make a motion that we embrace item number 1 and allow for the city manager to put an item on the 25th of July agenda that would address the library, the town center, and other major park improvements. Do I have a second?
Second.
And we have a vote on it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All, you said aye? Yeah. Any opposed? Are you abstaining? Quiet is, Mr. Connor says quiet is approval.
I know. I really, truly want the residents to have a voice. And if this is the only way that they can have a voice in voting on the library, and you have to burden them with other things, I will vote yes. But it is not a clear-cut way to go about it.
So what's going to happen now as far as ad hoc working with the
I'll
city
work with the
manager?
city manager and we'll appoint, but my impression would be, or my inclination would be, people who are actually working on those committees would be the ones that would be drafting the measures. So, well, let's work with the city manager.
Council has final say.
Well, the pros and cons probably that need to be drafted.
Mm-hmm.
With the stadium, can we also have the people from the baseball work with you on the pro?
Well, I think pro-wise, they certainly,
Yeah, they
people
would
that
be the
they
ones.
should be able to weigh in.
Right,
Sure.
right.
Give it the best shot.
So we'll have to get with the city manager. I'll get with the city manager after this meeting and over the weekend and provide clarity on the ad hoc committees. But we want to make sure that each of these measures gets the best. First off, has the wording that the people who are supporting it believe is proper. That the council would then, of course, review that, and then the write-ups would be as appropriate with the 75 words.
I think it's going to be really, really tricky here to come back next meeting with something that we all agree is, a good representation of pro and good representation of con. So it's going to take some extra effort on your part, city manager, to make sure you got the best people you possibly can involved in helping you.
Yeah, you're asking us to do a lot of work in a very little amount of time with very little resources. So if there's one of these items that I think can be pushed off till next November, I'm going to make that suggestion.
Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, can we have
Motion to adjourn.
I second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much for attending. We'll work to...
It is. We know that.
We're going to have pros. Wally, we're going to have pros and cons before we pass this thing. Otherwise, it's not going to go. Well, thanks.